In the beginning, space was still and silent. You drift through that stillness, past the afterglow of the Big Bang, into the hush of a newborn universe. As matter gathers and stars ignite, the universe breathes, slow, deep, and wide, but hidden. In the quiet lies a faint, invisible whisper, pulling everything apart. Close your eyes. Let your body soften, like mist evaporating into morning light. Let your thoughts loosen and scatter, like stars slipping across a night sky. In this quiet, you begin a journey not across oceans or mountains, but through time itself, through space, not as something above you or beyond you, but as something you are already inside, always have been. Breathe in. The universe breathes too. You begin at the edge of everything, not at the start of your story or mine, but the very beginning of all stories. The moment time began to tick forward, the birth of space itself. 14 billion years ago, the universe was smaller than anything you can imagine. No stars, no sky, no silence. Just potential, boundless and hot and ready to unfold. Then, in an instant too small to be measured, it happened, the beginning. Not an explosion in space, but an explosion of space. Every corner of the universe, all of time, all of matter, all of energy, surged outward, expanding faster than light itself. The Big Bang. But don't think of it as a bang, not really. That word feels loud, chaotic, rough. This was different. It was the opening of a flower in slow motion, a ripple in still water, the soft, silent bloom of everything. For a brief moment, the cosmos was dense and glowing. Temperatures soared beyond comprehension. Everything was light and yet so heavy with meaning. You drift now through that early haze. Your body has no form here. You're like a feather in a warm current, carried forward through time. Around you is a fog of particles, too young to be atoms, too wild to settle. But slowly, over hundreds of thousands of years, they cool. They calm. Light finally breaks free, and with it, the first great breath of the universe. You pass through. This ancient glow, the cosmic microwave background, a remnant so faint it now whispers in radio waves across the sky. It's still there, that light. In every direction, a baby picture of the cosmos. The afterglow of birth, and then silence, not absence, but potential, a pregnant pause. Space has grown cold, but matter has begun to gather. Gravity is at work, now quietly tugging on clouds of hydrogen and helium, drawing them together in a slow, inevitable dance. Time stretches. Millions of years pass like falling petals. The first stars ignite. They flicker on like candles in the dark, not all at once, but slowly, in scattered places. Their cores burn, forging elements that never existed before. Carbon, oxygen, iron. They live brief, brilliant lives, then collapse, spreading their gifts across the void. You drift among them, watching galaxies form great spirals and spheres, glowing cities of stars, each one turning, slowly, like a mobile over a sleeping child. It feels calm, doesn't it? This spinning, gentle order. But there's something deeper beneath the calm. A kind of tension, like a breath held too long. Because the universe isn't just expanding, it's still expanding. That bloom from the beginning never stopped unfolding. Space itself continues to stretch, like fabric being gently pulled from all sides. Imagine dots drawn on a balloon. As the balloon inflates, the dots move farther apart. But they're not moving through space. The surface itself is growing. That's what you're inside. A balloon that has no outside. A stretching that has no edge. For a long time, scientists thought the expansion must be slowing down. After all, gravity pulls things together. Surely, over billions of years, it would win. The galaxies would drift apart more slowly, maybe even stop. Perhaps one day they'd fall back inward in a great collapse, a big crunch. But that's not what the universe decided to do instead. Something else was happening. Something unexpected. Something hidden in the quiet breath of the cosmos. You float now in the vastness between galaxies, the intergalactic sea. It is not black, not really. It is the color of distance. A place where space itself is growing. Like a tide, unnoticed, until it pulls everything farther than before. In the 1990s, telescopes looked deeper into the past than ever before. They measured distant supernova explosions so bright they could be seen from billions of light years away. These stellar beacons revealed a truth that changed. Everything the universe wasn't slowing down, it was speeding up. Imagine throwing a ball into the sky. You expect gravity to pull it back, but instead, the ball begins to move faster and faster, racing away into the clouds. This is what space is doing, and so, scientists whispered a new term into existence: dark energy, a placeholder, a mystery, a name for the invisible wind blowing galaxies apart. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but its fingerprints are everywhere. What is it? We don't know. Not yet. It is not dark in color. It's not even a thing in the ordinary sense. It's not a gas, not a field, not a particle you could ever hold. It is something in the structure of space itself. A kind of pressure, soft and subtle, always there, and the more space there is, the more dark energy there seems to be. It doesn't thin out like matter. It stays constant, or maybe grows. So as the universe expands, dark energy becomes more dominant. It's not a force in the traditional way. It doesn't push like a hand. It stretches quietly, gently from within. The very fabric of reality, and you. You are part of it. Your body, your breath, your blood, all made from the ashes of stars, scattered by expansion, gathered by gravity. Living now in the thin ribbon of time where life can bloom. In a universe where everything moves apart, you are a brief coming together, a stillness shaped into thought. You drift past galaxies so far away their light will never reach us again. The expansion is faster than light can travel. They are lost to us, not because they are gone, but because space has taken them beyond the cosmic horizon. It's like watching ships disappear into fog, not over the edge of the sea, but into a sea that grows between you. This is what dark energy has begun, a slow unraveling, a peaceful scattering, a cosmos pulling itself open like a breath exhaled forever. But for now, it is quiet. The stars still shine. The galaxies still spin. The night sky above you is still full of light from the past. You can feel it, can't you? The rhythm of it, the rise and fall. The inhale and exhale of a universe always changing. You wonder, how did we see this acceleration in the light? How did we measure something so invisible? And what stories did those ancient photons whisper across the darkness? Breathe out, float still, and let the next chapter begin. Now, let yourself drift deeper. You are floating through the dark ocean of space. Your breath slow, your body light as a thought. The stars are far behind you and in front of you. Light, just light. But not like the light from your bedroom lamp or the sun warming your skin. This is older. This is ancient light. You are following a photon now, a single particle of light. It left its home over 1 billion years ago. It began as a burst, a flicker from a dying star, a supernova so bright it outshone the galaxy it lived in, just for a moment. That moment was ages ago. And ever since, this one little photon has been traveling, alone, unstopped, undimmed, until now, until it reaches your eyes. But first, you follow it back. Imagine time running in reverse. Galaxies unspinning, stars shrinking, light flowing backward into its source. You ride the photon across the growing stretch of space. You shrink with it, because as space expands, wavelengths stretch, and when you reverse that journey, the wave compresses, tightens, becomes higher energy. Colors shift. Red becomes blue. Faint becomes fierce. This is cosmological redshift, not because the light is tired, but because space itself has stretched around it. As the photon flies through, space, the space it moves through, expands. Like lines drawn on a stretching rubber band, its wave stretches too. Its color softens. You hover now in a time when galaxies were closer together. The universe was smaller, younger, warmer, and this photon was just beginning its journey, bursting out of a star that no longer exists. A flash of light no one saw for billions of years, but we see it now, our telescopes. These great eyes of glass and metal, they wait patiently in deserts, on mountaintops, and far above Earth's clouds in the stillness of orbit. They do not blink, they do not sleep. They collect light, piece by piece, moment by moment, building a picture of the universe that once was. Because when we look far, we look back. This is one of the quietest miracles of light. It carries time. The farther away something is, the longer its light has traveled. To look at a galaxy 1 billion light years away is to see it as it was 1 billion years ago. And when you understand this, the night sky becomes a time machine. You are not just seeing stars, you are seeing memory. The past stitched into the present with beams of light. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the stillness settle into you. Now imagine a telescope gazing deep into space. It catches the faint glow of a type Ia supernova, a very specific kind of star death. These explosions happen when a white dwarf star steals just enough matter from a neighbor, crosses a critical mass, and ignites in a thermonuclear flame. Why are these important? Because they always explode the same way, same brightness, same energy, like a candle that always burns with the same flame. So, by looking at how bright they appear, we can tell how far away they are. And by measuring how much their light is redshifted, we can tell how fast they are moving away. This is how scientists mapped the shape of the universe. One by one, they gathered these cosmic candles, these supernova-like tiny lighthouses flickering on distant shores, and what they found was startling. The farther the supernova, the faster it was moving away. Not just fast, accelerating. The universe was not slowing down, it was speeding up. This was not expected. It was not in the textbooks. Gravity, we thought, would slow the expansion over time, like a ball tossed upward, rising until it stopped and fell. But something was lifting the ball higher, faster, farther. That something was unseen. A gentle pressure, a push, a whisper in the fabric of space. Dark energy. You feel it now as you drift with the photon. You understand that every moment of light's journey is shaped not just by where it came from, but by the space it moved through. And that space, vast, quiet, growing, is not passive. It is not neutral. It is active. It stretches. It breathes. You begin to see the maps scientists built, not of places, but of expansion. Not just a picture, but a rhythm. A melody of speed and distance and time, where each photon plays a note. The melody tells us something unseen is at work. Some say it's a property of space itself. Others wonder if it's a new kind of energy field. Some whisper of modifications to gravity, or even multiple universes pressing in from beyond. But no one knows for sure. Still, the light keeps coming. You glide through deep fields, patches of sky where telescopes stared for weeks at a time, collecting photons too faint to see with the naked eye. In those tiny patches, thousands of galaxies appear, each one home to billions of stars. Galaxies layered like leaves in the forest, stacked across time, every one of them moving away, every one of them carried outward by the swell of expanding space, every one of them dimmer, redder, stretched farther by the journey of their light, and yet every one of them still visible, still heard, because photons don't forget. They travel with memory curled inside their wavelength. And when we catch them, we learn something not just about the stars, but about space itself. You float past the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, now one of the deepest images ever taken, a window into a time just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang. The galaxies there are tiny, irregular, still forming. Some are colliding, merging, glowing with young stars, and their light has taken over 13 billion years to reach us. You think about that. Light that began its journey before Earth, was born before the sun, before oceans, before breath, and it still found us. In those ancient photons is the fingerprint of expansion, a soft signature of speed. And from that signature, we know the universe didn't always expand this quickly. In the beginning, it was slower. Gravity had its hold, but then, sometime around 5 billion years ago, halfway through the universe's life, dark energy began to dominate, and the expansion began to accelerate. We don't know why, but the evidence is written in the redshift, a quiet trail of breadcrumbs across the cosmos, a soft puzzle solved one faint photon at a time. You follow the photon back to now, back through the sea of stars, back through telescopes and detectors and minds that dared to wonder. You think about how strange it is that light from billions of years ago can arrive at the exact moment someone is looking, that in this very moment, somewhere, a photon is meeting a mirror, a lens, an eye, and becoming a clue. You breathe in the wonder of it. Not just that the universe expands, but that we can see it expanding, that we can know something so vast from a signal so small, that a flicker in the sky can whisper, the universe is not slowing down, it's speeding up. You drift in silence, the thought hanging in the dark like a lantern dot. Why? Why would space do this? What is it that pulls everything apart, so gently, so persistently? You feel the question settle in your chest like a stone in still water, and in the ripples, you hear another thought forming. If the light reveals the acceleration, then what exactly is causing it? What is this invisible force? What do we call something we do not understand? Close your eyes again. Let yourself be weightless, not drifting but resting, suspended in thought, suspended in space. Around you, the universe stretches, vast and ancient. You're between galaxies now, in the great cosmic dark. A silence, so complete It feels alive above you. Stars twinkle. But in truth, there is no above here. Space has no top, no bottom, only direction and distance, and both are changing all the time. You remember the light, the photons you followed in. The last chapter, each one a messenger, whispering from across the cosmos. They told a strange story, a story about acceleration, about galaxies, not slowing, but racing away from each other, faster and faster over time. That story still echoes in your mind, and now it becomes a puzzle. You begin to see it forming in your thoughts, a cosmic contradiction, because long ago, scientists believed the universe had to be slowing down. It made sense. Gravity pulls things together. It holds your feet too. The ground, it keeps planets circling stars. It binds galaxies into swirling patterns. So it seemed obvious, as the universe expanded, gravity would try to rein it in, like a child tugging back on a balloon string. The universe, they thought, would stretch, yes, but more slowly over time. Eventually, maybe it would even stop, pause, reverse, fall inward, the Big Bang, followed by a big crunch, a beautiful symmetry. But nature, as it often does, had other plans. You drift further now, eyes open not to what is, but to what doesn't quite make sense. You picture the expanding universe again, not as dots flying outward, but as space itself stretching between them. And you see that stretch is speeding up. That's the puzzle. What could overcome gravity? What could make galaxies pull away from each other faster over time? It's not inertia, not a leftover push from the Big Bang that would slow down, fade with distance. No. Something else is at work. Something growing stronger as the universe grows larger. You float through a field of galaxies, like islands in a black sea, each one glowing with billions of stars. Each one drifting away from the others, not because they're moving through space, but because space is growing between them. You imagine dots painted on a balloon. The more you inflate the balloon, the farther apart the dots become. But there's no edge, no center, just endless expansion. The farther apart things are, the faster they recede. That's what astronomers observed. That's what the light revealed. At first, it was confusing. It didn't fit, so they looked again. More supernova, more light, more red-shifted galaxies, and every time the story was the same. Acceleration. You would picture the moment this realization spread through the scientific world. Quiet meetings, long equations, telescopes pointed at dusk. Data scrolled through in the middle of the night. You imagine someone staring at a graph, one tiny curve, and realizing it means the entire fate of the cosmos is different than we thought. The universe won't slow, it won't crunch, it won't collapse. Instead, it's speeding toward something else, an endless expansion, a quiet scattering, but the why still waits. You turn your attention to the unknown, the force, the field, the mystery behind it all. At first, scientists had no name, only numbers, only the behavior, so they gave it a placeholder, dark energy, not because it's dark like shadow or night or absence, but because it is invisible, undetectable by normal means. We call it dark the way we call anything unknown dark, not evil, not cold, just hidden. And energy, not because it flows like water or wind, but because it seems to push, gently, steadily, against the pull of gravity. It is not something we can hold. It is not made of particles like atoms, or even like light. It is something stranger. You imagine space itself having a tension, a pressure that isn't coming from inside matter, but from the vacuum around it. A kind of energy that doesn't weaken as space expands, but stays constant or even grows stronger. The more space there is, the more of this energy exists. So the faster space expands, the more this energy stretches it further. A loop, a quiet feedback, and suddenly you understand. This is not just a puzzle of numbers. It's a paradox of nature, something that repels, not attracts, something that grows with emptiness, something that turns silence into motion. You feel yourself shrinking in awe, not out of fear, but out of reverence. How vast this mystery is, how gentle and yet how powerful. You imagine space expanding forever. Galaxies pulled so far apart their light can never reach us again. Stars aging, dying, fading. A sky that grows darker not because it ends, but because it stretches beyond sight. That is, the future dark energy suggests, and still, we don't know what it is. You float past ideas now, theories shimmering like distant stars. Some say it's Einstein's cosmological constant, a simple number baked into the equations of space-time. Others think it's a dynamic field, like the Higgs, changing slowly over time. Some imagine extra dimensions curled beyond our perception, leaking influence into our universe. Each theory is a doorway. Each one asks you to step through, but none yet explain what we see completely. Not yet, and so the puzzle remains. You see it now not as something to solve, but something to hold. Like a riddle told at the end of a long day, not to frustrate, but to wonder over. You begin to sense the universe differently, not as a machine, but as a poem, each galaxy a verse, each supernova a punctuation, and dark energy a space between. The lines, a pause, a breath, you take one with it, in, out, and you feel the scale of it all. That something so gentle, something so small you cannot touch it, is reshaping everything. It doesn't roar, it doesn't shine, it doesn't make a sound. It simply is. You rest in this awareness, suspended among stars, floating inside the question itself, and slowly another one begins to form. If we have given this mystery a name, dark energy, then what else have we tried to name? How have we tried to define the undefined, to measure the invisible? If a name is the first step toward knowing, then what name did we give this force long before we understood it? What constant once tried to hold the universe in place? You hover in the silence between galaxies where nothing moves quickly, but everything moves surely. Space expands around you like a sigh that never ends, and somewhere deep in that expansion you feel the presence of something unseen, not a wind, not a wave, not a flame, but a pressure, quiet, constant, stretching space, gently and always. You try to name it, this feeling, but your words feel small. So do ours. We call it dark energy, but that name is just a placeholder, a question, disguised as an answer. Dark, because we cannot see it. Energy, because it does something. But what is it, really? To even ask the question, we have to look back, not just into space, but into the minds that first tried to make sense of what space is. You drift now through time, slipping backward like a leaf on a slow river, back past the era of redshift, past the discovery of expansion, into a world where people believed the universe was still, eternal, and fixed. You arrive in the early 1900s, a quiet desk, a chalkboard, a man with thoughtful eyes and hair that never quite settles. Albert Einstein. He is building something. Not with bricks, not with wires, but with ideas, bending the shape of space and time into a single, elegant structure. General relativity, a theory not of motion, but of curvature, where gravity is not a pull, but a bend, where mass tells space how to curve, and curved space tells mass how to move. You float beside him now, invisible, watching lines of chalk form loops and swirls, equations that hold stars in orbit and predict the bending of light. But Einstein sees a problem. His equations suggest the universe cannot stand still. If gravity curves space, then everything should fall inward, galaxies collapsing into themselves. Yet the universe appears stable. It isn't shrinking, it seems. Quiet, and so, in a moment of genius or worry, he adjusts the math. He adds a term, a balancing act, the cosmological constant, a number, small, precise, that pushes outward just enough to counter gravity's inward pull. A repulsive force woven into the fabric of space itself. Not a particle, not a pressure, just a constant. Lambda lambda, he calls it. And with that symbol, Einstein holds the universe still, at least, for a time. You watch history turn, a few decades. Later, Edwin Hubble discovers the universe isn't still at all. It's expanding, moving, breathing outward. Einstein hears the news, smiles, and calls his cosmological constant the greatest blunder of his life, because if he had trusted his original equations, he might have predicted expansion before anyone observed it. The constant was discarded, but now you know it has returned, not as a mistake, but as a mystery, because space is expanding, and not just expanding, accelerating. Something is pushing it, something invisible, but measurable. And perhaps, after all, Einstein's constant was not wrong, only misunderstood. You turn the symbol lambda in your mind now, watching it glow faintly in the dark. It is simple, elegant, and full of questions. What does it represent? What fills empty space with pressure? Some think it is vacuum energy, a subtle buzz in even the quietest nothing. Others believe it is something deeper, a field we cannot detect, a property we have not yet imagined. But the constant remains. It appears in the equations of cosmology, in the models that describe our fate, in the graphs that map the sky. It's not just a term anymore, it's a clue. You imagine space as a canvas. On it, galaxies are painted like drifting lanterns. But behind the paint is a tension, a tautness, that stretches the frame. Lambda is that tension. It doesn't twist or warp. It simply is, present in every inch of vacuum, pulling gently outward. And because space grows, the effect of lambda grows too. The more space there is, the more space stretches. You float in a quiet awe that something so simple, a constant, a symbol, could shape the destiny of everything. It is not a force you can feel, not like the sun on your skin or the pull of earth beneath your feet, but it is there, just the same. You drift further, and as you go, you begin to feel how the invisible becomes real, how a term in an equation becomes a truth. In the universe, how a symbol drawn in chalk becomes a pressure, shaping galaxies. You remember the puzzle, the acceleration, the light that took 1 billion years to arrive, and you see how this constant, this lambda, fits into the pattern. It doesn't explain everything, but it makes the numbers work, and for now, that is enough. Science moves slowly, not in leaps, but in steps. Not always with answers, but with better questions. You pause, suspended in the vast blackness between stars. Here, in the great quiet, the invisible becomes your companion. You feel its presence, not like a wind, but like a pause. Not like a noise, but like a shape in silence. It stretches the space behind you, and ahead. It is what pulls galaxies apart. What makes the future drift away? What hides the edge of what we'll one day never see again? Dark energy, the cosmological constant, the whisper in the vacuum. You see now that names are only beginnings. They are how we reach into the unknown and hold on to something. But names cannot fill in every shadow. So, you ask, if this invisible energy is tied to the shape of space, then what is space, really? Is it something that can be filled, or stretched, or torn? What does it mean to say that space expands? You feel a new metaphor forming, as gentle as breath. What if space were a balloon? Not one you can touch, but one, made of nothing, and yet still able to stretch, to swell, to grow. What if the universe is not in something, but is something, not floating inside space, but being space itself? You hold the image now, soft, round, expanding, a balloon in the void. Let your breath rise, let it fall. You are floating now in the deep quiet of space, not as a passenger, but as a witness. There is no up, no down, no gravity to weigh you, no motion to resist you, only vastness, only stars, far apart and growing. Farther still, you remember the constant lambda symbol, not of certainty, but of wonder. A whisper folded into the mathematics of space. A placeholder for something we cannot see, and yet see the effects of everywhere. A slow, invisible stretching dot. And so now you ask, what does it mean for space to expand? What is expanding? What is growing? You close your eyes and drift inside an image, simple, soft, almost childlike. A balloon, but not just any balloon. This one is strange. It's not filled with air or breath. It's not tethered or rising. It's not sitting in a room or floating through the sky. This balloon is space itself. And as it inflates, it's not moving through anything. There is no outer air, no box that holds it. It's expanding, not into something, but as something. The balloon is the universe, and every point on its surface is a galaxy, calmly resting, not flying away, but being carried by the stretching of the balloon beneath it. The more it inflates, the farther each point becomes from the others, and no matter where you stand, it feels like you're at the center, because in this kind of balloon, there is no center. You are everywhere at once. This image, this balloon in the void, is not a perfect metaphor, but it gives your mind something to hold. It gives shape to the mystery, because space is not static. It grows, and not from a point, not outward like a ripple in a pond, but uniformly, evenly, silently. The balloon grows larger, but its skin is not stretching into emptiness. It is making space as it grows. This is what the universe does, and the more space it contains, the more of this invisible energy exists. Dark energy, the driver of this expansion, the pressure that turns the quiet vacuum into a swelling cosmos. You float just above the balloon's imagined surface now, looking down, not at dots or stars, but at relationships, distances increasing, time stretching, light softening. You think of galaxies. Resting on this surface, they're not moving through space the way cars move on a road. they're staying still, more or less. It's the road that grows beneath them, and the farther apart the galaxies are, the faster they appear to separate. Not because they're rushing away, but because there is more space between them to expand. This is Hubble's law, a quiet truth of cosmology. Distance creates speed. The more room between things, the faster they seem to retreat. You hold this in your mind like a breath. The strange truth that motion is not always from movement, but from growth. And then you wonder, what is doing the growing? Why does the balloon keep expanding? Here, dark energy returns to your thoughts, not like a storm, not like a gust, but like a soft, steady exhale. It does not push in the way your hand pushes a door. It does not surge or shove. Instead, it stretches, it widens, it fills the silence of the void with something not seen, but deeply felt. And as the balloon of space inflates, the stretching doesn't weaken, it strengthens, because dark energy doesn't thin out. Normal matter stars, dust, planets, gas spreads and thins as space expands. The same amount of mass, stretched over more room, becomes less dense, but dark energy, it stays the same. Its density doesn't fade with distance. In fact, it might grow stronger as space grows wider. You think about that, an energy that becomes more important the more space there is. A quiet force that isn't diluted by time, but empowered by it. It's unlike anything else. You drift now toward the outer curve of this imaginary balloon, though you know, of course, there is no outer curve, no edge. If you were to travel in a straight line across space, you would never reach a wall. You would never find the boundary. You would only find more space. Because in a universe that expands like this, the horizon is not a place, is a limit of light. A line drawn not by matter, but by time, and that line moves. Each moment more galaxies cross it, not because they vanish, but because the space between you and them has grown so quickly. Their light will never reach you again. It's as if the balloon is stretching faster than light can run across it. You begin to understand that scale, not in miles, not in kilometers, but in time, in what can be seen, and what can no longer be seen. Our observable universe, our patch of the ballooners, all we can know, all we can ever measure. Beyond it, galaxies drift into silence. Not destroyed, not gone, just unreachable. You float in that realization, calm and quiet. You feel the weightlessness of truth. Not all of space is ours, and someday even less of it will be. You imagine a time far in the future when other observers in some distant galaxy may look into the sky and see nothing but darkness, no galaxies, no redshift, no balloon to trace, just silence. Because by then, the expansion will have carried everything away. Dark energy will have outpaced every message of light, and the balloon will stretch so wide, no one will remember it ever had stars. This is not tragedy. This is the nature of space. It grows, it carries, it hides. You begin to feel the balloon as not just a metaphor, but a truth folded into your being. Every atom in your body was once pressed closer. Every cell, every breath, every thought was once held in a tighter space, and now you are part of this expansion. You are a passenger on this surface, being carried outward by the slow, steady pulse of a growing cosmos. The balloon does not stretch because of heat or light or spin. It stretches because it must, because space contains this gentle pressure, this dark energy that nudges the universe wider with every moment. And there is no rubber skin, no wall, nothing to pop. There is only the stretching. The more you reflect, the more you feel it. This is not a surface expanding into anything. It's a fabric creating itself. And inside that fabric is everything we've ever known. You remember again the simplicity of it, the metaphor, the balloon, the child's toy filled with breath, floating upward. But this balloon is filled with space, and space is filled with energy, and energy gives rise to expansion, and expansion gives rise to isolation. It is a lonely kind of beauty, but a beauty nonetheless. You listen now to the silence between galaxies and feel it growing, not darker, but deeper. You sense a question forming soft and slow. If dark energy is what drives this stretching, then what is pulling back? Is there anything left that resists? Anything that tries to hold stars and galaxies close? Anything that fights the quiet scattering? You let the question rise like breath before sleep, and you feel the answer begin to form not in words, but in weight, a quiet counterpoint, a gentle opposition. You drift toward it, not in speed, but in thought, toward gravity. Breathe in again. Let the silence wrap around you like a blanket spun from starlight. You are still floating, still held in the vastness between galaxies, still suspended in the universe that grows like a whisper stretched across time. And now, in this stillness, you feel it faint at first, then stronger, a tug, not a violent pull, not a sudden jerk, but a soft, insistent presence. It does not demand your attention, it invites it. It is gravity. You've felt it before, every day. With every breath, it's the weight beneath your feet, the falling of water, the arc of a thrown stone, the orbit of moons and planets and thoughts. Gravity is everywhere and always gentle. Even when it holds galaxies together, it never shouts. It simply is. You drift closer to a spiral, galaxy its arms winding like sea foam in slow motion. Its stars are bound by gravity, held in long sweeping paths, each one in orbit, moving as if remembering where it came from. Gravity shapes this beauty. It sculpts the motion of stars, of dust, of gas. It whispers across time, pulling matter into form. It was gravity that gathered the first clouds of hydrogen after the Big Bang, coaxing atoms into stars. It was gravity that stitched stars into galaxies, and galaxies into clusters, and clusters into filaments across the universe. If dark energy stretches space, gravity binds it. They are opposites, but not enemies. More like two hands balancing a thread. One pulls outward endlessly. The other pulls inward patiently. And for billions of years, gravity was winning. You imagine the early universe, dense and young, with galaxies crowding closer, stars burning hot and new. Dark energy was there to quiet, small, barely felt. But gravity reigned. It slowed the expansion. It gathered matter. It carved the architecture of the cosmos. And yet, it could not stop the stretching completely, because gravity weakens with distance. Its strength fades like ripples across a pond. The farther two objects drift apart, the less they feel each other's pull. Dark energy does not fade. It doesn't care about distance. It doesn't weaken as space expands. If anything, it becomes more dominant, and so, over time, something changed. You drift through that transition now, billions of years after the Big Bang. Gravity was still shaping galaxies, but dark energy had begun to pull ahead slowly at first, like a tide turning. Galaxies that had once slowed in their drift began to accelerate again. not because gravity failed, but because the space between them grew too fast for gravity to hold them back. It was like trying to hold two feathers together while the air between them thickens and grows. Eventually, no matter how gently you press, they drift apart. That's the moment we live in now. The moment after gravity's peak. The beginning of dark energy's reign. You float between two galaxies, watching them retreat from each other. Gravity is still there, connecting them, tying them like threads. But those threads are stretched, weakened by the ever-growing space between. It's a tug of war with no noise, no break, only a slow surrender. And yet, gravity persists. You look inward, toward a single galaxy. Inside, gravity is still strong, still binding stars into orbits, still keeping clusters tight. Dark energy doesn't tear galaxies apart. It acts on the scale of space itself. It stretches the void, not the bonds within galaxies. And so, within these islands of light, gravity continues to shape. It curves space. It bends time. It holds. You drift closer to a star and feel its mass gently pressing on space. It's like a pebble resting on a blanket. The fabric dips and other pebbles roll toward it. This is gravity, a curve, not a force, a shape, not a shove. Einstein saw this clearly. He saw that gravity isn't a pulling, but a bending caused by mass, felt as motion. And the more massive an object, the deeper its dent in the fabric of space. You pass near a black hole, now the densest curve of all here. Gravity is so strong, even light cannot escape. And yet, around it, stars still orbit in silence. This is gravity at its most extreme. Still, it cannot stop the expansion of the universe. Because, while gravity is deep and strong in places, dark energy is spread everywhere. It acts on the backdrop of space itself, not on the things within it. It is the rise of the tide, not the motion of boats, and the tide is rising. You step back in your mind, looking at the universe from far away, not in space, but in time. You see the beginning, hot, dense, filled with gravity's voice. You see the middle, galaxies formed, stars born, gravity reigning, and then you see the turning. A few billion years ago, the expansion begins to speed up again. Dark energy begins to shape the future more than gravity, and the future stretches. You think now about what this means, about what will happen as dark energy continues its quiet rise. Galaxies will move farther apart. The night sky will grow more empty. The threads between clusters will thin, then vanish. And the light from distant galaxies will stop reaching us. Gravity will still hold local galaxies together, Milky Way and Andromeda, dancing closer, bound by their shared curve. They may merge one day, long after your time, but beyond them, the cosmos will grow quiet. You let the weight of that idea settle into you, not as fear, but as a soft melancholy. The universe is not ending. It is simply changing, growing apart, becoming more distant, and the two great forces, gravity and dark energy, are writing that story together. One shaped the past, the other shapes the future. You rest inside that balance. You feel how gravity is not gone, how it lives in every orbit, every falling apple, every turning moon. It is the reason your feet touch the earth, the reason stars shine. It is intimacy in the cosmos, closeness made real, and dark energy. It is distance, not coldness, but motion, not absence, but direction. It is the reason galaxies flee, the reason space expands. Together they are the rhythm of everything, push and pull, curve and stretch, gather and scatter. You take a breath. You wonder now, did anyone imagine this future? Did anyone think, long ago, that the universe could expand forever? You think back again to Einstein, to his equations, to his constant, and you remember that some saw this coming, some tried to give it shape, some tried to explain the acceleration, not through mystery but through mathematics. The constant, lambda, once called a blunder, now a clue. You float toward that idea again, not toward the force itself, but toward the symbol, the name. What does it mean to call something constant? And was it ever really constant at all? Float now, not through space, but through thought. The stars are still there. The galaxies humming in their slow spiral dances. But this chapter begins elsewhere inside a mind, a quiet room, a blackboard, chalk dust in the air, a universe waiting to be imagined. Albert Einstein sits with a pencil in hand. The year is 1917. He has already changed everything. His general theory of relativity has reshaped gravity not as a force, but as the warping of space and time. He has bent the cosmos with equations, turned planets into dancers on a curved stage. But something troubles him. His equations suggest motion, a dynamic universe, one that contracts or expands. But that's not what the night sky seems to say. At that time, no one knows the universe is expanding. The galaxies, those smudges of distant light, are assumed to be part of a single, eternal structure, still balanced. So Einstein adjusts his equation. He inserts something new, a symbol, lambda. The cosmological constant, a soft term, a balancing force. Its purpose is simple: to counter gravity on the largest scales, to keep the universe static, not shrinking inward, not growing apart. It is, in a way, a gentle lie told to preserve symmetry, and for a while it works. The math holds, the theory calms. The universe, on paper, remains still, but nature was never still. You move forward in time now, past chalkboards and quiet doubt. It is 1929. Edwin Hubble peers into the sky, his telescope fixed on galaxies far away, and he sees something strange, a redshift in their light, a movement, a retreat. The farther a galaxy is, the faster it moves away. The universe isn't static, it's expanding, and just like that, Einstein's constant seems unnecessary. A patch on a painting that didn't need fixing. He calls it his greatest blunder. He removes lambda from his field equations. He returns to the clean, elegant vision of a universe that breathes. But history is not so quick to let go, because years pass. Technology sharpens, data accumulates, and one day, nearly a century after Einstein's scribble, lambda returns. You've followed the story. Distant supernova, faint light, accelerated expansion, and so, the cosmological constant comes back not as a correction, but as a necessity. Without it, the equations fail to match the universe we see. With it, everything fits. Almost you hover now, inside the equations themselves. Numbers spiral like galaxies. Symbols unfold like nebulae. They are quiet things, but they hold enormous weight. The cosmological constant isn't just a trick of math. It is a description of the energy density of empty space, a number that tells us how space behaves on its own, without stars, without planets, without anything, a number that gives shape to nothingness. And yet, it raises questions, because in quantum, Field theory, the mathematics of the tiniest particles, the vacuum isn't empty. It teems with fluctuations, virtual particles popping in and out of existence, energy shimmering below detection. And when physicists try to calculate the energy of this vacuum, the result is staggering, far too large. In fact, the predicted value of lambda from quantum theory is over 10 times greater than what we observe. That's not just a mismatch. That's the largest known discrepancy between theory and observation in all of physics. You pause, letting the magnitude of that gap settle into your chest. It is as if the universe is whispering one thing, and our math is shouting another. A contradiction, folded into the very fabric of space. And so, some began to wonder, what if lambda isn't constant? What if it changes over time? You drift into theories now, not conclusions, but possibilities. In some models, dark energy is not a fixed number, but a dynamic field, like a breeze that changes direction, a fluid that flows through space, its pressure shifting with time. They call this idea quintessenza, name borrowed from the ancients, who once believed in a fifth element beyond earth, air, fire, and water. This new quintessence would not be constant. It could rise or fall. It could become stronger or weaker as the universe grows. Maybe it began stronger. Maybe it faded, then grew again. In these models, dark energy has a personality subtle, changeable, still unseen. Others suggest even stranger ideas, that lambda is a reflection of other dimensions, curled up and hidden, that vacuum energy leaks from parallel universes, that our universe is but one bubble in a frothing sea of bubbles, each with its own constant, its own laws. And in this multiverse, we happen to live in a pocket where lambda is small enough for galaxies, stars, and life to form, because in a universe with a larger lambda space would expand too quickly. Galaxies would never form. Matter would scatter before stars could burn. There would be no planets, no people, no breath. This is the anthropic argument. We observe a small lambda because only a small lambda allows us to exist and observe. It is a circular truth, a soft, self-selected answer. Not all scientists find it satisfying. But in a universe so vast, so unknowable, perhaps our presence is a clue in itself. You reflect on this, that a single number, the value of lambda, could decide whether stars live or scatter, whether time stretches or collapses. It is humbling and beautiful, because this number was once a mistake, a forgotten term, a quiet footnote in Einstein's work, and now it may be the most important number in the cosmos. You return to that symbol. In your mind, lambda, it is not just a letter. It is a question, a bridge between what we know and what we still do not, a whisper in the equations, a presence in the void. You look back over the journey, the birth of the universe, the light of distant stars, the redshift, the acceleration, and now this symbol that ties it all together. You feel its tension not as fear, but as possibility, that in naming the constant, we have not ended the mystery, we have only made it more precise. You drift now toward a deeper idea. If the vacuum has energy, if space itself hums with something unseen, then perhaps the emptiest places are not truly empty. Perhaps even where there is no matter, no starlight, no gravity, there is still. So methinga, kind of weight, a kind of presence. You let the thought unfold gently, preparing you for what comes next. For in the places where there should be nothing, There is something that pulls space apart, and so the next chapter begins. Now imagine nothing, not darkness, not silence, not a room with the lights turned off, something purer, a space with no air, no atoms, no warmth, no particles drifting or bouncing, no dust, no breath. You float through it, now of this imagined void, expecting weightlessness, expecting stillness. But something inside you whispers, even here, even now. It is not truly empty, because nature does not allow pure nothing. Even the quietest corner of space hums softly with potential. You drift through a cosmic vacuum, a place between galaxies, far from stars, far from any hint of matter. And yet, it is not hollow, not truly. Something lives here, a presence without form, a kind of energy folded into the fabric of nothingness. This is the paradox of empty space. It weighs something, not like a planet, not like a stone in your hand, but in its own strange way, it adds to the universe. You remember the constant lambda. You remember the balloon expanding. You remember the acceleration. And now you begin to understand why. Because if space itself has energy, then creating more space means creating more energy. And that energy pushes outward, quietly, patiently. Always you picture the vacuum not as blankness, but as texture. A surface you cannot see, but which ripples and shifts below perception. Even in absolute zero heat, no motion, there is fluctuation. Virtual particles wink into existence, pair up and vanish. This is not imagination. It is quantum mechanics, the uncertainty of energy, even in emptiness. You pause here, weightless, in a volume of space smaller than a grain of dust, and still it holds possibilities. This is vacuum energy, the gentle trembling of nothing, and though it is nearly impossible to see, its consequences shape everything. You drift across a sea of quantum foam, fleeting, restless, soft. These fluctuations are too small to notice, too quick to grasp, but they are there, and when they are summed across the endless volume of space, they matter. They bend the expansion, they influence the acceleration. They may be the dark energy we seek to understand. You think now about pressure, not the kind that presses your skin, but a negative pressure, a pressure that pulls space apart. This is what dark energy may be, not a force, but a tension. Imagine stretching a rubber sheet. The more you pull, the more it wants to return to rest. But dark energy behaves differently. It stretches the rubber and keeps stretching, not from outside, but from within. Not because something is pulling, but because the sheet wants to expand. You rest in this strange reality, a vacuum that expands, a nothing that grows, a silence that accelerates the cosmos. It is the most invisible part of everything, and it shapes the largest structures we see. You think again of the galaxy's O's, distant islands of light. They are floating on this sea of vacuum energy, and the sea is rising, not in waves, but in all directions at once. You wonder, how can something so empty create so much effect? It's the nature of scale. In a laboratory, vacuum energy is small, barely a whisper, but in the volume of the cosmos, spread across billions of light years, its influence grows. It becomes dominant. You reflect on this, that what we once thought of as nothing has become the most powerful presence in the universe, more than matter, more than radiation, more than the galaxies themselves. About 70% of the energy in the universe is in the form of dark energy, a form that may be rooted in the very emptiness we once ignored. And yet, there are puzzles, because when physicists try to calculate how much energy a vacuum should have, the numbers explode. The predicted values are far too large, far more than what we observe in the gentle expansion of space. Why? Why does theory suggest an enormous pressure, but reality gives us only a whisper? This is one of the great unsolved questions. Perhaps there is a cancellation, a balancing of energies we do not yet understand, or perhaps our models are incomplete. Our understanding of quantum fields still growing, but even without answers, the pattern remains. Space expands, the vacuum stretches, and galaxies recede. Because emptiness, it turns out, is not empty. You float farther now, past filaments of galaxies and into true intergalactic darkness. No stars shine here, no gas glows, and still space grows. You imagine an ocean that deepens as you sail, not because you move faster, but because the ocean expands beneath your boat, and you can never see the edge, because it's not an edge, it's a process, a becoming. That is what space does. It becomes you breathe. Softly you wonder how it feels to live inside something that grows because it is empty, to ride through a universe that is propelled not by heat or collisions, but by the quiet weight of its own stillness. You are not separate from this. Every atom in your body rests in a pocket of space. Every cell vibrates within the vacuum, and though the stretching is too slow to feel, too vast to see directly, you are part of it. Your life is lived inside a moment carried on the curve of this expansion. You are here because emptiness allows you to be, because space did not collapse, because acceleration gave galaxies time to breathe, to cool, to form. And inside one of those galaxies, on a quiet blue world, you opened your eyes, to wonder, to ask, to trace light backward, and to begin imagining what it means for nothing to weigh something. You rest in that thought. You let it hold you, and now a new question arrives. If dark energy shapes the universe through its presence in empty space, then what happens to the future? If acceleration continues, if galaxies drift apart forever, what kind of universe will remain? One not filled with stars, but with silence. What will that emptiness feel like? What happens when space grows so vast that most of it is dark, and most of it is unreachable? Where does it all lead? Close your eyes again. Let time dissolve. Let the present soften around you, and allow your thoughts to drift not backward, but forward, not into memory, but into possibility. Float ahead into the quiet. You are no longer in the now. You are drifting through the far future of the Cosmozan era, not yet written, but waiting, not in clocks or calendars, but in distance, in silence. You pass billions of years in a breath. The stars around you still shine, but dimmer now. The familiar constellations have twisted into strange new patterns. The Milky Way and Andromeda have danced and collided, merged into one larger galaxy, its arms stretched, its shape calmer, its stars more scattered. You hover above this new home, not as a visitor, but as a witness, and beyond it nothing. The other galaxies, once painted across the sky like lanterns in a sea of ink, have drifted too far. Their light can no longer reach us. The cosmic horizon has moved, expanded faster than even light could follow. And so, from this place in time, the sky is lonelier, still beautiful, still full of stars, but surrounded by a deepening dark. This is the beginning of cosmic isolation, dark energy, still quietly at work, continues to stretch space, more and more with every passing eon, not dramatically, not quickly, but always. And now you feel its consequence. You imagine a scientist living in this future, looking into the sky, searching for clues of expansion, but seeing only one galaxy, no redshift, no evidence of other galaxies retreating, no map to build, because the universe has become too wide, too stretched, too quiet. The fingerprints of the past are fading, the cosmic microwave, background once a gentle glow in every direction, has dimmed beyond reach. Its faint warmth has been stretched until it is indistinguishable from the deep black of space. You pause in the quiet of this thought. So much of what we know comes from what we see, from what light tells us, but in this far future there will be less to see, less to study, less to remember, and yet something remains. Stars still burn, but not forever. They are finite, like candles. They consume fuel. Hydrogen becomes helium, then heavier elements, until balance fails. The most massive stars live quickly, brilliant, short, then gone. The smaller stars, like red dwarfs, burn slowly, for trillions of years, but eventually all light fades. One by one, stars flicker out. Some explode in supernova, some collapse into black holes, others shrink into white dwarfs, ghosts of once burning suns. You drift now through this era where starlight is rare. The galaxies, still slowly spinning, are filled not with fire, but with embers. The universe enters a phase of dusk. Stillness begins to settle. Entropy continues its quiet climb. It is not a sudden death. It is a gradual dimming, a sigh, stretched over endless years. Black holes become the final sculptors of matter. They consume what remains: stars, gas, dust. They pull it all in with silent gravity, gathering what cannot resist. And then, even black holes begin to fade. They evaporate slowly through a process called Hawking radiation, a whisper of heat leaking from their event horizons. Over unimaginably long time scales, trillions of years, even these giants vanish, and when the last black hole disappears, the universe becomes dark, not as a void, but as a presence of nothing. No stars, no galaxies, no light, just particles drifting apart in an ever-widening sea of cold. This is the farthest future, the heat death of the universe, a state where energy is so spread out, so evenly diluted, that no more work can be done, no more stars can form, no more patterns can arise, only stillness remains. You float through this moment not with fear, but with awe, because this end is not violent. It is not a collapse. It is not chaos. It is peace. The universe does not shatter. It does not burst. It just expands and continues to expand forever. You wonder if anything will remain to witness it, to remember the galaxies, the stars, the songs of light. Perhaps not. Perhaps consciousness was just a brief flame, a flicker during the time when stars were warm and close. But that flicker was enough, because you are here now, imagining, asking, wondering. That is a kind of immortality, a kind of defiance against silence. You think back to now, this moment. In your life, we exist in a brief golden age of the cosmos. Stars are still burning. Galaxies are still visible. The background light of the Big Bang still hums in every direction. We can map the expansion. We can trace the redshift. We can study the constant. We can dream about dark energy. We are alive during the time when the universe is readable, knowable, bright. You let that thought settle into you, a privilege, a wonder, a reason to keep listening. But even in the far future, when light has faded, and space has widened into near silence, dark energy continues its quiet work, stretching, unseen, relentless. Is this the final truth? Is this how everything ends, not with a bang, but with a great drifting apart? Not in fire, but in widening silence. You consider that ending, and then you remember dark energy may not be done surprising us, because, though it seems steady, it may not be constant forever. It may change, it may shift, it may accelerate the universe, not gently, but wildly. It may tear space apart at the seams. Some call it the Big Rip, others a mathematical ghost. No one knows. And so, even in the stillness of the far future, there remains uncertainty, a question waiting in the dark, and with it, a reason to keep listening, to keep asking to listen not just to light, but to the silence that follows it. Come back now, not to a place, but to a moment, not to a planet, or a time, or a star, but to yourself, to now you are here, in the only moment you've ever truly lived in, and around you. The universe continues to stretch. You have drifted across time, floated between galaxies, ridden photons that took 1 billion years to arrive, and followed whispers of expansion through a cosmos that hides its deepest secrets in the fabric of space itself. Now you are quiet, and the universe is too, but it's not empty. Silence is not the same as nothing. Silence can hold meaning. Silence can speak, so you listen to the hush between galaxies, to the rhythm of cosmic breath, to the pause between questions. You listen, not with your ears, but with your wonder. And slowly, gently, something becomes clear. Dark energy does not shout. It does not leave trails you can touch or pull apart. It leaves only suggestion, only drift, only distance. It is not the presence of something, it is the presence of change. And sometimes the most powerful forces are not loud, but soft, not obvious, but patient. You think again of the balloon expanding, not into space, but as space. You think of the stars, drifting gently away from each other, like friends who once stood close but now wave across oceans. You think of the cosmological constant once dismissed, now revived, and you think of the emptiness that isn't truly empty. There's a comfort in these contradictions, a kind of strange peace, because if the universe is filled with mystery, then we are not failures for not knowing everything. We are part of that mystery. We are made of it. You look inward now toward your own thoughts, your own breath, your own stillness, and you realize everything you are, your atoms, your blood, your skin, was shaped by forces you cannot see. Gravity pulled your atoms together. Starlight made the elements in your bones. And dark energy, ever so softly, has shaped the rhythm of time around you. You are not just in the universe, you are of it. You are part of a process still unfolding, part of a sentence still being written, and that sentence doesn't need to end it, just needs to be listened to. You float again in space, not through the vastness of stars, but through the silence of not knowing, because science, at its heart, is not a list of answers. It is a practice of listening to light, to math, to silence. And dark energy, for now, remains mostly silence, but it's a silence full of shape, full of direction, full of consequence, a pressure without weight, a presence without form, a soft rhythm felt only in the drift of galaxies and the widening of space. You wonder, what else will we discover? Will we ever hear the voice behind this silence? Will we ever touch what stretches us apart? Or will dark energy remain forever the soft question behind everything? Perhaps that's the point, that some things exist not to be solved, but to be followed, like music with no final note, like a horizon that always stays just ahead, like a dream remembered only in feeling. You feel small now, but not in a way that belittles you. You feel small in the way a single candle feels small in a vast cathedral, precious, centered, aware. You know now that silence does not mean absence. It means space to wander. You return to the idea of balance, gravity pulling, dark energy stretching. The universe is suspended between these two, the force that holds things together and the force that lets them go. And isn't that what we feel in life too? The longing for connection and the freedom of release. Some things you hold close, some you watch drift away. Stars do this, galaxies do this, and so do we. Dark energy is the lesson of letting go, not as abandonment, but as continuation. You are still listening, still floating in thought, still present in the space between knowing and not knowing. And as you do, you realize the silence holds you. It doesn't push, it doesn't pull. It just is, like dark energy. The further we look, the less we see. The deeper we listen, the more the silence echoes back. And in that echo, there is peace. Not finality, but rhythm. Not endings, but expansion. You drift in this feeling, not needing answers. You have journeyed across the cosmos without leaving your room. You have traveled billions of years in the space of a breath. And now you rest. You breathe in, the stars continue to burn. You breathe out, the galaxies continue to drift. And somewhere, space itself stretches softly outward, not in a hurry, not with urgency, but with the slow, unstoppable rhythm of something ancient and true. You are floating in the silence. And perhaps this is what dark energy really is, not just a force in equations, but the reminder that the universe can move, can grow, can become more, even from nothing. You breathe again, you are here, you are listening, and somewhere the universe is still unfolding. Let your breath settle once more. You are still floating, no longer searching for answers, but opening to impressions. You are not chasing the light now. You are following the shadows it leaves behind, because some things cannot be seen directly. They must be traced, deduced, felt by the shape they leave in the world. Dark energy is one of these things. It offers no color, no reflection, no particle to hold in your palm, and yet you know it's there, because galaxies drift, because expansion accelerates, because light stretches, not just by distance, but by something deeper. You are learning now that reality is not only what is visible, it is also what moves the visible. Gravity works this way, too. You cannot see gravity. You see the way an apple falls, or the way a moon clings to a planet. You see the curve in the path, and from that motion, you infer the cause. You picture space not as a backdrop, but as a flexible, invisible fabric. Wherever there is mass, it bends. Wherever there is energy, it shapes. And so we learn to see the unseen by watching how other things respond. You drift now beside a cluster of galaxies, a great web of mass suspended in the void. They are not randomly placed. They swirl around invisible centers, curved by something they do not touch. We map their motion, we measure their speed, and from that we glimpse the shape of things we cannot see. This is how we found dark matter, and it is how we know dark energy is real, too. Because the universe doesn't behave as it should if only visible things exist. Something else is guiding the motion. Not a push from within a galaxy, but a stretch between them. You pause here and think, how many things in your life behave like this? How often do you understand something only by how it moves, what's around it? You cannot see love, or time, or memory, but you see their marks, you feel their gravity. You watch the arc of someone's life bend around them. Dark energy is like this, not a presence in the usual sense, but a presence revealed by absence. It leaves behind widening gaps, lengthened light, soft acceleration in a place that should slow. It is a sculptor whose tool is space. And so you begin to trust the indirect. You begin to feel the truth that what cannot be seen is not less real. It is simply subtler, more patient. You follow now the journey of a photon. It leaves a distant galaxy. It travels across billions of years, and when it arrives, it tells a story. Its wavelength is longer, its energy lower. It has been stretched, but not by its own choice, by the space it passed through. That space expanded, that stretch happened, and from it we learn. You sit with that image, light-shaped by what it moved through. It's not. Unlike water flowing through a landscape, the stream tells you something about the valley, the way it curves, the speed it runs, the eddies it forms. You can map the invisible ground by following the water above it. So too with light and space. So too with energy and expansion. You feel this now not as a thought, but as an understanding even. Here, in the quietest place, motion tells you something. Dark energy may never leave a direct signal. No particle trail, no burst, no sudden flare, but it sculpts what we see. Not in lines, but in distances, not in patterns, but in change. The universe is full of such things. The wind cannot be seen, only the way it moves leaves. Air cannot be held, only felt against the skin. The pulse of your heart cannot be heard, without silence around it. You are learning to look sideways at truth, to find the shape of what cannot be seen, to feel the pressure of dark energy in the space between galaxies, to see its echo in the way galaxies drift apart. This takes patience, it takes stillness, it takes silence, but you are ready now. You are listening, not for sound, but for pattern. You are looking not for color, but for curvature. You begin to wonder what other forces might be waiting, hidden in the shadows of data, masked in the drift of stars. What might we discover next? Is there another constant, another presence hiding in equations, another silence that means motion? The universe may never stop asking us questions, and not all questions will sound like questions. Some will arrive as drift, some as pause, some as imbalance in the orbit of a star. And we will learn, again and again, to listen with everything, to hear through numbers, to see through subtraction, to believe through motion. You rest in this awareness that science is not always the act of naming, but of noticing, that reality may be built on what cannot be seen and still known deeply. You wonder what the next 1,000 years will reveal, what instruments will arise, what minds will turn the next corner, what motion we haven't yet noticed. Dark energy was once beyond imagination. Now it is part of our map, part of the story, part of the silence. You breathe into that dot. You do not need to finish the mystery, to belong to it. You are already part of it, already moving with it, already shaped by it. You do not need to see dark energy to know that it has touched your world. The stars would not be where they are without it. The night sky would not look as it does, and perhaps neither would you. You float now, softly, letting this chapter settle, not with a full stop, but with a pause, a gentle space between questions, a place to breathe before continuing, because there is still one more step to take. You have seen the shape of the invisible. Now you return to listen, not to sound, but to the silence behind it all. Let yourself be still, not in body, but in thought. You have traveled far, not across continents, not between stars, but through understanding, from the first soft breath of the universe to the slow, quiet stretch of its future. You have followed a mystery that never speaks aloud, yet shapes everything. Now you arrive at the edge of silence, but this silence is not an ending. It is a place of rest, of reflection, of openness. You sit inside the unknown now, and you are not afraid, because some questions are not meant to be answered. Some are meant to be carried, to be held like a warm stone, or a memory, or a song that never quite resolves. Dark energy has done this to you. It has pulled galaxies apart and drawn your thoughts together. It has stretched light and deepened your curiosity. You began this journey looking outward into stars and space and acceleration. Now you look inward. What has changed? You still don't know what dark energy is. You still don't know if it is a constant, a field, a ripple from dimensions beyond this one. But you know it matters. You know it is real, not in color or shape, but in consequence. You know it guides the shape of time. And so you sit now, not waiting for answers, but listening to the quiet echo of the questions themselves. You think again of that gentle paradox, that silence is not the absence of sound. It is the space that lets meaning arise. The same is true of dark energy. It is not absence. It is what gives shape to presence. You feel it again, not as a force, but as a suggestion. The space between stars, slowly widening. The background hum, growing fainter. The galaxies drifting softly into solitude. There is beauty in this stillness. Not tragic, not cold, but eternal, because what you see is not loss. It is unfolding. The universe is not ending. It is becoming more of itself. And you are part of that becoming. Your thoughts, your breath, your awareness, they exist inside this vast story. A story written not in words, but in curves and echoes and drifting galaxies. You remember the beginning, the hush after the Big Bang, the glow of the first light, the slow gathering of matter, the birth of stars, the quiet balance between gravity and expansion. You remember how it all seemed to make sense until it deadened single quotes, until the universe sped up, until light redshifted more than it should, until the equations no longer held unless we added something invisible, something else. And even then, even now, we do not know what that something is, and yet we know it is there. This is what science teaches us: to trust in the seen, while reaching toward the unseen, to listen carefully, to ask deeply, to accept the gaps. Without giving up, you are not at the end of the story. There may be no end. The universe continues. Dark energy may continue, or it may change. Perhaps it is not constant at all. Perhaps it will grow stronger and pull space apart so quickly that even atoms will come undone. Perhaps it will fade, and the universe will slow once more, folding gently inward in some new pattern. Or perhaps it will surprise us, as it always has. You may not be here to see that future, but your questions will be. They will echo in instruments yet unbuilt, in minds yet born, in data yet gathered from light that has not yet arrived. Because this is what it means to wonder. It is not a moment, it is a legacy, a thread you hand forward, a breath you leave in the silence for someone else to find. And in that way, you are part of the science, not by having answers, but by helping hold the question open. You drift in this truth, softly now, like a feather in deep air, like a galaxy on a slow current, like space itself, stretching towards something it cannot yet name. You feel gratitude, not for knowing, but for being allowed to not know, for having a place in a story that is still being written, still being whispered, still unfolding across billions of years. You remember now, at the end of this journey, that dark energy is not the only thing that works in silence. So do you, so do your thoughts, so does sleep, and so you breathe. You are back in your own body, your own moment, but something has changed. The sky above you is the same, the stars are still far away, the light still stretches, but now you feel it, that unseen rhythm, the gentle stretching of everything, the silent motion behind it all. You feel it not as fear, but as peace, the peace of motion that needs no destination, the peace of space that grows not to reach something, but because it must. You are floating again, but this time you do not ask where you are going. You simply listen to the silence, to the question, to the soft, expanding breath of a universe that is still teaching us how to listen. And just before you drift off completely, just before your thoughts blur into sleep, you feel one last truth settle gently beside you, that even the darkest energy carries light within it. Light we haven't yet learned to see, but someday we might. Settle into the quiet again. Let your breath soften, not just in your chest, but in your thoughts. You are not rising now, not falling. You are hovering in the middle of everything, in the still center of motion, in the pause between ideas. The universe, stretched and stretching, seems quiet. But in that quiet, a new question stirs. What if this story of expansion is not just physical? What if the cosmos is not just a place, but a process? Not just a stage for events, but an event itself. You drift now, not across galaxies, but within awareness, an awareness of patterns, of rhythm, of breath, the same breath you followed across these chapters, the breath of space, of time. What if the universe is not just growing, but remembering? What if each star is a flicker of recognition, and each galaxy a thought taking shape? What if dark energy is not just acceleration, but a gesture subtle, ongoing, like a hand opening slowly in the dark? You let this feeling rise. You do not need to prove it, only to hold it. The universe is full of symmetry. Spirals repeat. Structures echo. The arrangement of galaxies looks like the wiring of a brain. Neurons, stars, ideas, light. You think of how you think, and you wonder, is the cosmos doing the same? Is expansion not just movement, but an unfolding idea? Is dark energy the breath behind that thought? You hover near this wonder, gently, respectfully, because not all questions seek answers. Some seek presence, Some seek to be witnessed. Perhaps the universe, too, wants to be witnessed, and in you it sees itself reflected. A mind that asks, a breath that expands, a silence that listens. What if consciousness is not apart from the cosmos, but a feature of it? What if the ability to wonder, to imagine, to build meaning out of silence is not an accident, but a consequence? You do not need to decide, only to feel the possibility, and so you let yourself float again, not through galaxies, but through metaphor, the way a wave moves across water, but the water itself goes nowhere, the way a melody moves through a room, but the air remains still. You wonder, are you the wave? Are you the melody? You think again of the light you followed, photons crossing the universe to arrive in your gaze, each one a story, each one a moment. You think of the math, the equations, the lambda that stitch the patterns together, but you also think of dreams, of instinct, of myth, of the ancient people who looked up and saw more than stars, who saw stories, creatures, destinies. Maybe they weren't wrong. Maybe the human desire to find meaning in the sky is not childish, but primal. Maybe the universe invites it, after all. How strange that we can ask these questions. How rare, how miraculous, that a pattern of atoms on one small planet can describe, however incompletely, the expansion of everything. You let this thought settle in your chest like a warm stone. You feel not just awe, but intimacy. You and the universe are not separate. You are what the universe does when it wanders. Your breath is not outside of it, but inside. A local ripple, a soft echo, and so you listen again, not just to silence, but to attention. You wonder what it means to be here, in this moment, in this body, at this exact turning of time, a creature made of stardust, asking about stars, a being made of atoms, asking about space, a presence made of time, asking where time goes. You are not lost in the cosmos. You are the cosmos, momentarily remembering itself, and dark energy. It is not your enemy, not your answer, not your undoing. It is the gesture of motion that never ends, the thought that stretches without fear, the question that holds space open. It is, perhaps, the breath of the dreaming universe, and you are its dream. You breathe once more, deeply, let the idea linger. This is not theology, not certainty, not even belief. It is wonder, sacred, simple, scientific wonder, the same kind that leads to telescopes, to notebooks, to equations scribbled in the dark, the same kind that made Einstein draw lambda, that made Hubble measure the drift of galaxies, that made thinkers across millennia lift their heads to the stars and ask, what is this? Why is it here? And what is my part in it? You do not need answers. You only need the willingness to ask. That is how you participate. That is how you belong, not by knowing, but by listening, by being part of the universe's unfolding. As it continues to drift, to expand, to scatter, and to remember, the silence you sit with now is not blank. It is alive. It is the space before the next question. And you are welcome there. You are welcome to wonder, to return to this silence again and again, not to solve it, but to keep it company, to let it shape you the way space shapes light. And so, once more, you rest in the stillness. You let your breath match the pace of the universe, slow, steady, stretching. You let your mind drift, not away, but deeper in, toward the mystery, toward the rhythm. toward the question that never stops asking itself. And as you begin to fall into sleep, a quiet part of you listens one last time and hears, somewhere beyond, the veil of words, the sound of the universe becoming itself, over and over again.